Hello everyone. So a while ago, I said, a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, I said that I would go over some ab stuff for you. If your back is bothering you, like after a leg day, it could be a couple of things. One, it could be that you just have really tight hamstrings. So obviously we want to stretch those hamstrings because that's just gonna pull on our lower back. But another thing that makes me nervous is that I want to make sure that when you are performing all of your leg movements, you are bracing your core. And that's a really hard concept sometimes to get across, especially since I'm not right there with you. But in the way I like to describe it is when I say bracing your core, imagine that someone is going to punch you in the stomach. And so what would you do? You clamp down. It's kind of like flexing your abs, except we don't really know how to flex our abs. So just imagine that someone is going to punch you in the stomach and you engage your abdominal wall. So that's one way that I can describe bracing. Another thing is to make sure that your ribs aren't poking out. So you want to draw your ribs in and pull them down. So that's going to anchor the tailbone down just a little bit more, because what we don't want, and I'm going to use my PVC pipe here, is for our back to extend. So those of you that practice yoga, spinal extension, when you're going to like camel pose or wheel or back bend and wheel, you do extend through the spine. But we don't want that extension when we are squatting, when we are lunging, even when we're doing our hip thrusts. Even when we do our hip thrusts, we want our core to be braced. So I've got my PVC pipe here. It's on my back just as if I were in the squat rack. Now, if I overextend in my low back or in my spine in general, even in my mid back, if I extend too much, notice how my butt is going back and my ribs are poking out. We don't want that at all, okay? Brace the core. Sit back and down with a nice tall spine. My abs are working the entire time. So, when people ask what are the best exercises for abs, squats and deadlifts are. So you don't want your butt to go back and your chest to go forward. You want to try to keep your shoulders over your hips. I mean, a little bit because your hips go back, but you just don't want to lose that connection to your core when you are squatting. Now, another thing with deadlifts, whether you're single leg deadlifting or regular deadlifting, sumo deadlifting, or whatever, same thing. Whenever you hinge at your hips, you don't want your back to collapse, and you definitely don't want your chin jutting away from your chest. So we want the back of the neck to be nice and long. We want to be braced here. So notice how I went from extended to nice and long. That's what you want. So the entire time, draw the navel in towards the spine. And again, whether it's single leg or both legs, don't collapse in the back. Now, ways to create this on the ground and ab exercises that you can do. We don't need to do any crunches in order to work our abs. Those of you that have any back issues, I advise against doing crunches. You don't need to do that at all. What we want to focus on instead, those of you that do have any back issues, are things like plank and spinal balance. So, y'all know spinal balance from yoga. Start in a tabletop position. And while I'm here, even here, you guys will see, hold on, I gotta move this so I can't see myself. Even here, if you're in tabletop and your belly is dipping down, that's bad. We want to brace. So see the difference there? There's no engagement. There's a nice braced core. Someone's gonna punch me in the stomach. It's not gonna bother me one bit. Staying engaged. Then extend one leg back and one leg forward. It's easy to lose that connection to collapse. Everything is in nice and tight. Ribs in, ribs down. And this seems simple enough, but hold it for a longer amount of time if you find it simple. Right? Equal time on left and right. Don't do it, do it. Hyperextended, strong. Stay strong at the center, reach out. Now the other thing, so let's kick it up just one notch. In that tabletop position, without collapsing in the low back, tuck your toes under behind you, lift up into a bear crawl position. My knees are hovering right above the ground. So we've had this in some of our ab work, right? To where we move to the right and to the left. If you do that with a hyperextended spine, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So the back stays full. Breathe into the kidneys, puff those kidneys up. Hold here. And you can just hold and hover as long as you can. If you want to make it harder, you could move left or right. But really what you want to do to make it harder, just hold it for longer. Now, another thing we can do. I've got my block here. With your block, you know how we have our boat pose? You're going to place the block between your knees. And you're going to hug the block. So that's going to engage those deep abdominal muscles, the transverse abdominal muscles. So in your boat, in fact, you could even do your boat with your feet on the ground. Practice hugging that block and you'll feel those deep, deep muscles turning on. Kick it up a notch, lift your feet off the ground. Hold and hover. Because oftentimes what happens when we do a boat pose is we push our abs out. We don't want to push them out. We want to hug them in. Whenever you're doing core work or standing leg work, remember, it's like we're bracing all the way around. It's not just sucking in, it's engaging. It's engaging and drawing the ribs down. Now another thing that I like to do, so that tabletop position, let's flip it upside down so that you're now laying down on the ground. And I'll show you without the block first. Flex your feet so your toes are flexing towards the ceiling. Make sure your knees are right above your hips. They're not too far away, and they're definitely not too close, because if they're too close, you're not going to work your abs at all. So start with your legs so that your knees are right over your hips. Now, from here, right now, if you just lay here casually, you could probably slide your hand underneath your back. Let's take that space away. Press your low back, your mid back into the ground, and you will see right there. If you're not sure what bracing is, press your entire spine into the ground, and you'll feel that bracing action. And you can just hold here. Another thing that you can do is take your hands to your thighs, and you're going to curl your upper back off of the ground. Make sure that you didn't just push your abs out. You're going to draw the abs in again. Push hands into thighs, thighs into hands. So much fire going on in those abs right here. It's amazing. Now, with the block, take the block between the thighs, hug the block, hands on thighs, curl your upper back off the ground, try and get the tips of the shoulder blades off, hands into thighs, thighs into hands, hug the block and squeeze. While you're doing this, ribs are in and down. Don't push your stomach out, draw the navel in. Squeeze and hold, squeeze and hold. So much work. Now, then we can do what's called a dead bug, and this actually takes a little bit of coordination. So you're in that upside down tabletop on the ground, thighs parallel to each other, perpendicular to the ground, and reach your arms up towards the ceiling. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your opposite leg out and your opposite arm out. So it's like spinal balance on your back. Again, but make sure that your back doesn't curl off the ground. Press the low back down, and then switch. Now, if you want to make this even harder, which I know most of y'all do, I'm going to take my big ball. It's really tricky. So what you're going to do, you're going to take opposite leg and opposite arm out, and just hold here. The leg that's extended hovers above the ground. Don't let your spine come off the mat or the ground, wherever you are. Hold and hover, and then switch. Again, opposite arm, opposite leg. Holding that ball in place. It is tricky. And then, of course, we've got our plank variations. Forearm plank or regular plank, but I want to show you from the side. Remember, we don't want our back to dip down. So when you're in your plank, we don't want our butt in the air. You can do a good spot for sun. You don't want your butt in the air and your ribs poking out. Long spine. So I went from hyperextended to nice neutral spine. Your gaze is pretty much down at the ground. We don't want the chin away from the chest. Neck is neutral. There's about a space of a grapefruit between your chin and the chest. Same thing applies to your forearm plank. Don't let the butt go up and the belly go down. Neutral spine. And you could even add a hugging of the block in there. Holding the block between your knees or inner thighs as you hold your plank. And squeezing it. Really getting that deep abdominal action. So the main thing is we want to stay braced, and this applies also anytime we take our arms overhead. So if you are doing a standing shoulder press, and when your arms go overhead, you notice that your ribs poke out. Try and lengthen through the spine. So when I'm doing my shoulder press, I'm braced. I used to do a lot of stuff with a staggered stance, but what that does is it makes you not have to brace your core. So I've been focusing on when I'm doing my shoulder press or any overhead work, I keep my feet together so that I have to focus on a nice neutral spine. Think like long, ugly butt as you press the weights overhead. Or as you do like tricep extension. It's really easy to lose your connection to your core in tricep extension, or anytime your arms are overhead, it's really easy to lose that. So long butt, neutral spine, core braced. So basically always think that you're protecting your internal organs from somebody who's just going to come around and jab you in the stomach. So these core exercises aren't fancy, but what they're going to do is they're going to give you that mind and body connection so that you can stay braced throughout all of the movements, whether it's a leg movement, an actual core movement, or a movement where you're taking your arms up and overhead. You guys, let me know if you have any questions on this. I had to slide the comments off. Hey, Rachel! Because I couldn't see myself, and I want to make sure you could see my spine. But if you have questions on this, let me know, you guys. Keep the questions coming. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good Friday.